Serving it up to you live on the Buffalo Rumblings Multicast Network. I'm Bruce Nolan. Where's Nate Geary? And this is Food for Thought, a show combining two of your three favorite F words. The first two, obviously, being, football and food, because we would never use any other F words on this show because this is a PG-13 show. Although you are allowed one F-bomb on PG-13 movies. One of the great discussions that my wife and I have had on more than a few occasions is what is the greatest single-use F-bomb in the history of PG-13 movies? I'll level with you. I think X-Men First Class is right up there. I don't know if you guys ever seen X-Men First Class, but that's right up there. So Nate Geary was here with me, just sitting here, getting ready for the show, and then poof, he was gone. He just ghosted me like a bad Tinder date. But tonight, it was not because of something I said the way that it usually is. Instead, it was because his power went out. Just decided to leave. Just didn't want to be part of it anymore. So I was ready. Nate was ready, but Nate's power was not ready. So it's going to be just the two of us, me and you guys, right here, live on a Friday night. And you know what? Sometimes you got to adjust. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Dave says, what's up? Did this just start? Yes, it did, Dave. Dawn is in the house. Says, hey to Richard Rush. Richard Rush, one of the goats of the Bills Mafia fandom, who says that, hey, I'm just listening because I'll be driving. He just put me on in his background so I can be background noise for him. David says the weather is getting bad. I don't know if David lives close to Nate, but perhaps that's the reason why Nate decided that, his power was more important than his obligation to me. I kid. Okay, so real quick before we get started, we're going to get seated. We're going to sit down and have a nice meal tonight. Make sure to hit all of the appropriate engagement buttons, like, subscribe, rate, review. As a reminder, we will not get to every comment, but we will get to every YouTube super chat. So if you need to get our attention, we got a full show that hopefully I can get Nate back on to discuss with me. But in the event he doesn't, I will be running the entire thing solo, which is unexpected, but you got to do what you got to do. So I'm going to need some help from the comment section. So please help me out here, folks. Andy Anderson says, I am here to replace Nate. I desperately need some engagement from the comment section tonight of all nights because I was not expecting to have to carry this solo. And you know how much I don't like surprises. I'm not a surprises guy. I joked around on Twitter today that at one point in my life, I did something spontaneous, but I had to make sure it was planned out first. I got to plan out my spontaneity. So make sure, hit all the engagement buttons, like, subscribe, rate, review, all those things. It really means a lot. We really appreciate it. We love you guys. We're going to talk about last meals tonight. Last meals. Why? Why are we talking about last meals? Because it's the last regular season game of the year. And some of the things that we're talking about this week that we wouldn't be talking about on other weeks is, okay, how do you want to wrap up the regular season, right? How do you want to wrap it up when you go into the next phase of the season, the second season, that some people would call it? What do you want your team to show you? What do you want to consume on the last regular season week? So I thought, let's talk about last meals. Last meals are really a topic that pops up quite a bit in my household, because what it does is it forces you to take all of your preferences. It forces you to take all of your discussions about comfort food and things that make you feel good and things that are bad for you and things that are good for you and things that give you nostalgia, and boil it down to, no, you get one. That's it. One last meal. That's it. So I was having a discussion with my wife earlier today about last meals. And she was like, I don't know what you're going to pick. You just like so many things. I said, yes, I do. One of the things that keeps me as a fairly happy guy in life is the amount of things I like. What you will find is the amount of happiness that you see from a person in your life is directly correlative to how much they like things, Do they just like everything, or do they just dislike everything? If they dislike everything, they're probably not happy. Sorry. But me, I love all sorts of foods. All sorts of foods. All of it. Andy Anderson says he wants a Brazilian steakhouse JR's with him. Absolutely. David says, I want a nice vanilla game with clean line play on both sides, perhaps a vanilla wafer or a tall glass of water. Oh, David's a listener. David is 100% a listener, ladies and gentlemen. I'll love it with you guys. I was inches away from saying tall glass of water as my last meal, but I decided to go with this. And I know this is going to be shocking, perhaps for a lot of you. I want a really good cheeseburger. That's what I want. I want a really good cheeseburger. There is something nostalgic and comforting and filling and satisfying about a really good cheeseburger. And if you told me I get one meal for the rest of my life and I can guarantee it's going to be a really good cheeseburger, I'm probably in. Grant Turner asks, is it a smash burger? Yes. So I prefer smash burgers to pub burgers, mostly because I want the texture differential between the crust and the meat to be significant enough that I don't feel like I'm biting into a piece of meatloaf. I don't have a problem overall with pub burgers. I don't have a problem with them. I just prefer smash burgers because texture differential is a really important thing to me when it comes to food. You will probably realize this as you get to hear more and more of my food opinions, is that texture differential is just a big deal. I don't like homogeneous textures. And so even things like meatloaf, I want a good crust on it and things like that. Things like steaks, I want a good crust on it. It's just texture differential is important. And thank you. Ryan and Andy both say, is this a diner cheeseburger? That's exactly what my wife said. That is exactly what my wife said when I told her. She goes, is it a diner cheeseburger? I said, it might be. If you follow me on Instagram, if you go to Instagram, Bruce Exclusive is the Instagram, there is a particular diner that is within relative driving distance for my wife and I. And it has a ridiculous pub burger where you can get just Texas toast and bacon and the whole thing. And it's absolutely, absolutely fantastic. Ryan Sullivan is in the house. Ladies and gentlemen, Ryan Sullivan is host of the 585 report on Buffalo Fanatics. He is fantastic. I have been on his show. And he says, Bruce, what's good is chili soup. No, chili's a stew. We've been talking about this. Ryan and I'm going to block Ryan real fast because he said that. So, because he's a chili soup guy. Nate, real fast, is chili soup or is chili stew?
Chili is stew.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. By the way, hopefully I sound okay. I look okay.
You sound okay. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
The video is a lower resolution, and it's a little bit. It's showing off most you for your neck up, like it's really high.
Good.
But so it's not an overly flattering angle. Don't stick your head back; you'll get a triple chin or something like that. But it's overall it's not too bad.
Yeah. So right before we went on, my power is browning out. Is that something that it is? Like it's not quite out, but all of my lights have dimmed. My internet is out. So in order for me to get on the show, Bruce, what I did was I have a separate backup laptop that's always plugged in case of emergency. And luckily I plugged my phone in, which was at 11% to use as a, personal Wi-Fi spot. So literally everything that I needed, all of my plan A's all went awry. Luckily I had plan C and B and C ready to go for this show. I would be very upset to miss Luke in this interview tonight. My power was messing with me, but here we are. I am going to power through this. Literally.
Well, literally, we appreciate that. Powering through. It was built for specifically this. Someone, just so you know, on Twitter asked me if Tom Brady cut your line.
That's Tom Brady very
cut the power.
Listen, I'm a grown man. I'm now 30 years old. I just went downstairs in my creepy ass basement to try to hit the breaker box, and I wish that you could have seen me run back up the stairs like a big sissy girl. I stubbed my toe twice running back upstairs because it's dark as hell down there normally. Now it's extra dark and there's no light in the hallways. I'm a baby. I don't care. I'm a big baby. I'm home alone too. Oh, Oh, I
Oh,
think we got full
I
power
saw.
back
I
too, so
saw.
that's nice.
Okay, so David wants our opinion on something. Bruce, controversial topic. Do you put mayo on your burger or not? Also, yellow mustard. Okay, so first off, I am not a huge yellow mustard guy. I like lots of different types of mustard. Honey mustard, a good Dijon, spicy brown, just pure yellow mustard. Not a huge fan. Just overly vinegary for me. When it comes to mayo, I'll do it just to give the burger a little bit of lack of dryness on it. But if there is another sauce or condiment I can use aside from mayonnaise, I would do it. I very, very, very rarely take ketchup on the burger. It's too much. It's too sweet. It's too overpowering. I will take a nice light mayonnaise or aioli. I will totally do it, but it's it's not it's not my preference. And yellow mustard, again, not my preference. So Andy
So
Anderson says, if anyone cut his line, it would be Belichick. That's exactly right. It would be Belichick.
that's true, but Brady also, he's a sketchball himself. I will say, in terms of condiments, I am not a mayo guy. I don't know if you knew this about me, because mayo reminds me a lot of like what this thing is.
There we go. We
That's
have,
like,
ladies and gentlemen, the eggnog. The famous eggnog is being shown by Nate Geary right now. And I'll level with you. I think at this point, it's more gelatinous than it is liquid.
yeah, there's the liquid is here at the bottom. This part
separated
here, it is fully separated. The top has some bubbles, but it is full on solid up top. Yeah, it's almost like eggnog jello.
Ladies and gentlemen,
home.
you should know that Nate's girlfriend actually went into his room, was like, what was that? You need to throw that out. He said, no. Nate defied the girlfriend to say, no, this is important. This is part of the show. The things he is willing to go through for you, his beloved listener.
That's exactly right.
I think it should be really, really, I mean, you're a hero, Nate. You're a hero. I mean,
I didn't want to
go that far.
Listen, you said it, not me, pal. I didn't want to be the one to say it.
Okay, so we're talking about last meals before you got on here, and I said that my last meal is a really good cheeseburger. I said you just want a really good cheeseburger, much like Tony Stark when he got back from being, otherwise involved overseas and in a camp of some sort that he did not enjoy. When he got back to America, the first thing he wanted was a cheeseburger. Much like that, if you are removing all the other options from me, I want a really good cheeseburger. Nate, last meal, what's it going to be?
Last meal. Well, first and foremost, today I'm back on a diet, by the way. So I'm back to eating uncool things. Actually, it's not true. My diet is pretty cool based on the things that I actually enjoy in my diet. It's why it's easy to do, and I can lose weight because I enjoy the things that I eat. But if I was not dieting, first of all, it would start with a salted caramel covered banana bread as my beginner, because that is what I had today. My girlfriend's friend, Sarah, who lives down the street, she brought a piece over. Bruce, it was the most unbelievable thing. Imagine taking something as great as banana bread and drizzling salted caramel on it. And then it almost became like a bread pudding it was solid, but it was wet with the liquid caramel. Brother, I'm telling you, that thing elevated one of my favorite things ever. So last meal, probably 2 pieces of that, nice and thick cut, lots of salted caramel, because I'm a dessert first kind of guy. I'm a freak. And then I think I would probably like to reverse sear a full filet mignon, something like, big and meaty that you could cut into and have multiple like medallions, and do the reverse sear medium rare with like maybe a béarnaise sauce or some kind of egg yolk based cream sauce that I think, would really kind of go next level. And then easy, a 4-cheese risotto to go on the side with some thin cut, the thinner style asparagus, not the real big, thick grill asparagus, but the real thin ones, because I think they cook a little quicker and they don't tend to be so damn hard in the middle towards the end. It's kind of all one great experience rather than the big ones where really just the head of the asparagus is a good experience and the rest is trash. So for me, that's the meal. It's very specific, and I'm sorry. No, I've thought of this a few times.
I'm good with it, and quite frankly, I appreciate I appreciate you doing what you need to do. Okay, moving along because we're behind. If Bill's Atlanta was a food, I'm going to go first. I'm going to make it fast. Bill's Atlanta was a food. It is my wife eating a Reese's
My
peanut butter
wife.
cup, and I will tell you why. So
That's a weird
my
thing.
wife eats Reese's peanut butter cups in kind of an odd way. She eats a lot of things in an odd way, but the Reese's peanut butter cup, my wife eats the entirety of the chocolate around the exterior first.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then at the end, she's left with a ball of peanut butter.
Yeah.
And she pops the ball of peanut butter in her mouth, and that's the finish. And
Yeah.
because of
Okay.
that, the second half
That's
of her
weird.
experience is markedly better than the first half of her experience.
Yeah.
So that is Bills Atlanta. The first half, you're like, okay, that's fine. I can see where we're going with this, but this second half had better be good. Otherwise, what's the point? And the second half was good. And it was the thing that we were all out to consume at the very beginning anyway. So for me, Bills Atlanta is specifically the way my wife eats a Reese's peanut butter cup.
First of all, you can't say my wife and not say it like that. That is a rule.
My wife.
That is a rule I'm now making for the podcast. Moving here from here on forward, I'll have it written down and sent to your accountant. And
Well, that's not fair because you don't have a wife, so you have to get married and there's this to be equal.
That's true. Separate but equal. That's what. Okay. So I will tell you that. First of all, your wife is a damn genius. It's exactly how I eat my Reese's peanut butter cups. All the hard chocolate around the outside, you're left with peanut butter, small layer of chocolate, and it's the perfect balance of what you want from a Reese's cup. You want more peanut butter than chocolate. That's why, by the way, the holiday themed ones, whether it's the pumpkin shaped one or the Christmas tree one or the rabbit shaped one, the reason those are better than the traditional, more peanut butter, a Reese peanut butter, whatever their concoction is to chocolate ratio, that's why those ones are better. And the specialty seasonal ones are always better. So she is doing exactly what Reese's themselves has identified as a real core issue for themselves during the specialty time of year. So she, my friend, is ahead of the curve while you continue to just drift in her wake.
Well, I mean, I've pretty much been just riding her coattails since we got married. So this is not shocking. No one is surprised by this. Okay, so if Bills Atlanta was a food, Nate, what is it?
So it's weird. I'm going to make this. I don't like the meal. And it doesn't, me not liking it doesn't have anything to do with why I picked it though. But what I'll say is it was like a Western, again, much like Two Halves, it's like a Western New York fish fry during Lent. And why that is you could go anywhere, it's not about the place that you do it. And it's not about where the Bills would have played Atlanta. The Bills were going to beat Atlanta regardless. You could have put them in a neutral site field. You could have went in the Georgia Dome. You could have had them there at Highmark Stadium. Wind, no rain, beautiful indoor conditions. Doesn't matter. The Bills were going to beat the Atlanta Falcons, just like it is easy in Western New York to find a quality fish fry anywhere. It's like one of the easiest things you can do. The second part of this is they won and you just kind of left and you're like, okay, yeah, they won. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. That fried haddock was exactly what I knew it was going to be, what it's always been for me. It just was kind of par of the course for me, Bruce. So that's it for me. I'm actually not a fish fry guy at all. I do not like beer battered and fried fish. And I know that's a Western New York staple. I think it's just repulsive. I don't like tartar sauce as well because I'm not a mayo guy. So double whammo, don't like it.
Makes sense completely. JR says the game was leftover Pudgy's Pizza because it's better later. I don't know what Pudgy's Pizza is. Nate, what's Pudgy's Pizza?
No
idea. JR, you're going to have to help me with Pudgy's Pizza. It's got to be something I don't know. David says, I feel like it's eating a bowl of cereal that gets soggy at the end of the half and is destroyed, but then you go on a roll with homemade cinnamon buns to save your breakfast. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. All right, moving along. Nate, Jets, schematically, what are you looking for? I'll start. Here is what I'm looking for against the Jets. The Bills have never schemed for Zach Wilson before. They know full well, as pretty much anyone who has done even a small bit of looking into Zach Wilson will do, is that he is one of the worst, if not the worst, quarterback under pressure and when blitzed in the entire NFL. Now, coming out of BYU, we knew that was going to be the case early on for Zach Wilson because with the style of offense that he ran at BYU and the offensive line he had and the quality of opponents that they played, he was not under pressure very much. at BYU. It just wasn't a staple of the Zach Wilson experience. And because of that, he's kind of had to learn to deal with it. I want to know if the Bills trust their front four to get there against a New York Jets offensive line that is down to their third string left tackle. I want to see if the Bills are going to come out blitzing or if they're going to come out with the rushing their four. And then if it doesn't get there, then they'll dial up blitz. I want to know how much the Bills trust their pass rush to get there early in the game. That is the number one thing I'm looking for is, have the Bills just basically given up the idea that they're going to get consistent pressure with four at this point? Or are they always going to start off the game kind of feeling it out, and then we'll see how it goes? And if it doesn't get where we want it to go, then we'll start to crank up the heat when it comes to blitzing.
I think it's the latter. And I think they're always going to go into a game looking to see what they have. Who's hot that day? Is it F.A. Obata early in the game? Does he get a couple of good pressures to start a game? How does Jerry Hughes look to start a game? So I think in this matchup, no Elijah Moore. That's huge for them, right? I mean, he's their best player offensively in terms of weapons. Michael Carter is going to be there. He's a nice guy to the backfield. He could play some. He can hurt you in the pass game as well. But again, that's a running back coming out of the backfield. I like your matchups with the linebackers against these running backs. And obviously, in this, no Corey Davis, he's out for the season, and Braxton Berrios is going to be out. He just placed on IR yesterday, so they're down quite a bit the wide receiver position. I don't think that the play in this game is to pressure by blitzing. I think it's getting after it with your front four, dropping back in zone, maybe giving Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson an opportunity to play some man coverage this week to try to gain some confidence, work on their technique. In a game where Keelan Cole and some of the other guys, the Denzel Mims of the world that you're going to be matched up against in this game, you like those matchups if you're Leslie Frazier, if you're Sean McDermott, and you want to give your guys some opportunities to play some things and get into some coverages that maybe they have not been able to run in real time, particularly Dane Jackson, who's, on week 5 or 6 now of real game time experience. You can wash week 1 that he had to start against New England because we know they threw the ball 3 times. So give him an opportunity to play some man coverage, to get some bump and runs, and get some hands-on receivers in that 5-yard bump window, and see what you got there. So I think on top of that, I think you want to play a lot of soft coverage zone. You want Zach Wilson to try to fit it into the windows. And he has yet to really show that he could do that on a consistent level in the NFL. So I don't think this is going to be an ultra sexy type of game plan, Bruce. I think this is going to be about as vanilla as it gets. I expect Mitchell Trubisky to be playing by the second half. So whatever that means schematically for the first half for that to happen, that's what I think ultimately this team would like to. Sean McDermott would like to see, Zach Moss, Mitch Trubisky, maybe Isaiah Hodgins is going to be brought up in this game. You'll probably see some Boogie Basham in this game, some AJ Epinesa, some guys that have been some of their younger players that have either been on the practice squad and or on, in terms of guys like Boogie Basham, guys that have just been inactive. Matt Breida is another guy. Maybe you see them try to get him the ball in week 18 as well, just to try to get him going a little bit.
You do know that there's nothing you can do to get lobster, right? It doesn't matter if they do Matt Breida, you still owe me lobster. So sorry about that.
Even playoffs.
Yeah, playoffs.
Super Bowl.
Playoffs. We're talking about playoffs.
By the way, just a quick update. Our guest for the evening, Luke Russert, realized that you have to have Google Chrome. So he's in the process of downloading it. We'll have him in here in just a minute if he doesn't just pop up while I'm talking. So we'll have him in just a few moments.
So a couple things. Number one, David says, Bruce, what's the status on the elbow reveal? Yes, you missed it. It's on my Twitter. Go back and find it because I did it. I held up my end of the bargain. I gave you an actual picture. It was extremely close up of my elbow. I will not tell you if it's left or right, but I gave you a specific picture of my elbow. Andy says Bruce once had a podcast co-host who ran Cleveland Bills Backersworth. He lives in Ohio, although so does Greg Tomset. Though it's entirely possible Bruce and Greg are the same person, he says. So I will tell you this. I have met Mr. Tomset. We are not the same person. I can absolutely promise you we actually have been seen in the same room at the same time. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, our guest for the evening has decided that Google Chrome is the way to do it. It's decided that, hey, this is what's going to happen. And I would like to bring in and welcome the former Emmy Award-winning journalist and son of one of Buffalo's iconic sons, Tim Russert. He appeared on NBC Nightly News, Today, and MSNBC. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. A big round of applause here for our guest, Luke Russert. Luke, how you doing, man?
How you doing, fellas? How goes it? Thank you for you guys had a power outage. I had some technical difficulties here, so
Yeah.
we'll do it live, as they like to say.
We'll do it live.
TV,
That's right.
and we'll do it live. This is actually off the iPhone right now, and my dog's very excited to be here too.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do. You know, iPhones.
Right.
Nate's got laptops. He's running to the basement to check to make sure his power wasn't cut by Bill Belichick.
He had a backup laptop. I was listening to that. I mean, that's
back. I've actually got 3 right now, just in case. You know, one's not. And by the way, none are classified. So if anybody wants to steal my laptops, you'll get my template for the Buffalo Bills halftime show. But other than that, there's not a lot of valuable assets on there. By the way, I'm loving the quarter zip you've got on there, Luke.
Oh, thank you
absolutely.
very much. You know, after the holidays, I wear black as it has a thinning effect. I learned that from an interview that Phil Mickelson once gave. The guy goes, "Phil, why do you wear black on the golf course?" He goes, "Because I'm really fat." So after the holidays, after the eating, you know, it's a good look to wear the black. Oh, look at that! I'm feeling stuff. All right.
Yeah, JR gave you a round of applause there in the comment section there, Luke.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so real quick before we get into really important stuff, Luke, we talked about last meals. So I got to get yours first. Last meal, you got one shot. You got to have something that you're going to go into the afterlife with.
Oh, man.
What's it going to be?
This is going to sound like I'm trying to play to the audience, but I would actually go for 20 wings extra crispy, to be honest with you, from one of my favorite places here in DC called Wingo's that I like a lot. I'm not going to say where I get them in Buffalo because it'll get me in trouble, but
that's exactly right. It will.
Wingo's here in DC. 20 extra crispy hot from Wingo's I'd do well with. That's all
you know, Luke, being that your old man was from South Buffalo, I've got a couple of thoughts on where you might be choosing. But when was the last time that you would have been in Western New York?
I was there right before COVID. I was there like 2019 was the last time I was there.
So
and I usually do one home game a year in normal times. And I love going back there. You know, my aunt still lives in Orchard Park. Whenever I go back South Buffalo, see the old Blackthorn Club.
Yep.
I don't think Daly's Bar is still open. I think it's a new ownership.
Yes, it's new ownership.
Passed away. Right. Mr. Daly was like 200 years old. God rest his soul. Great guy.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, no, I get back in there and you know, we'll see how far this playoff run goes. Maybe get up there for a game. Oddly enough, I have a winning streak on going to games in Buffalo. I have a losing streak in terms of going to games on the road.
Away games.
So I got to, if I go to one, I has to be in Buffalo.
Yeah, and you know, keeping that in mind, it might be important that if they host another divisional round game, that we bring that good juju. But what I was going to ask you in South Buffalo, I mean, my family is rooted in South Buffalo. There's a literal Geary Street where most of my cousins still live. It is like,
so
you know,
is that why you're the Notre Dame fan? Did you go there, or did you just get the South Buffalo Notre Dame fan?
So, Luke, this is going to blow your mind. I have a cousin who's 2 years older than me with the exact same name. He went to Lancaster High School, was an unbelievable athlete, was a diver at the University of Notre Dame, and was, so he's far more successful in the athletic realm. I played Division III football. We are not the same, him and I. But no, he went to Notre Dame. I just grew up a Notre Dame fan, being most of my family's from South Buffalo. My grandfather was a big Notre Dame fan. So that was just always my allegiance anyways.
All right. Well, we'll give it to you. Close.
Well, listen, the next time you come in, if you've never had 911 Tavern,
I've had them. I've had them. They're very good.
The owner, God rest his soul, he passed away, I think, right before COVID or right during COVID, and his daughter has taken over and making those wings. But that guy, he put together one hell of a wing himself in South Buffalo. But South Buffalo's got some seriously good options for folks that maybe like don't ever really travel south of the city, you know?
Oh, yeah. And the cultural center is a lot of fun too. They pour a good pint there as well.
Well, and listen, next time you're in town, drive through Seneca. It looks completely different from the last time you've seen it. I mean, it is, dude, it looks beautiful. Blackthorn, Blackthorn has like an amphitheater in the backyard now. It's
What?
insane, man. Yes. And like
Yeah.
brand new fencing, brand new everything. It's huge. They got a stage out back. Like it's insane, dude. The whole area. They redid the old Shays theater that's there, and they've got dude, it looks unbelievable. So next time you're in, we'll make sure you head down. Bruce, what do you got? We could talk football. We could talk food all day. I guess I'll let you start us off in the conversation about some football.
Well, the first thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about what Luke's been up to, because
that's true.
Let's be honest, writing a book and traveling around the world is far more exciting than anything you and I have ever done in our entire life. And that's what I want to start with. I want to start with this. First off, my understanding, 67 countries, 6 continents. Is that right, Luke? Okay, so first off, how far along are you?
Bar in Antarctica yet, but we're working on it.
Goodness gracious. Okay, so first off, how far along are you? Are you done? Have you started?
Well, I
are you
wrote
halfway
a draft,
done?
but I wrote this draft that was about 330,000 words, which is insanely long. If you want to, the average book is about 85,000 words. The greatest book in terms of the amount of words per page that packed the biggest punch is The Great Gatsby, which was 49,000 words. So I have to come in at about 85,000. So that means cutting a lot. So the editing process is very hard because you kill your baby every single day. And thankfully I have a good editor who I get along with very well, but he has to have a lot of those tough conversations, which is like, this just is not going to go in. There's no place for it. So working from TV, and you guys know this from TV and radio, there's so many good things that end up on the cutting room floor, but the pacing is so quick of your day-to-day job, you don't think about it. It's just sort of, hey, that was great. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. Whatever. On to the next one. On to the next interview. Whatever. But in a book, when you actually spend all this time writing something and you lose an entire 12,000 word chapter, it stings, and you kind of want to fight for it, and you kind of want, oh well, maybe we can put it in somewhere else, etc. So it's been a very humbling experience writing. My mom's a writer by trade. She's obviously very good at it, and she's giving me some pointers along the way. But in terms of locking in and really having to do a deep dive into your psyche and get those things out on the page, especially for me, kind of transcribing them from journals and making them make sense, it's been quite a journey. It's a lot easier to bloviate on TV and radio, I will tell you that. I miss those days right about now.
Wow. I'm trying to imagine. So I've had all these great ideas that I want to use for a podcast or a show or something like that. And they're sitting here in notes next to me. It's completely different than actually recording them and then never releasing them. And then no one ever gets to see it. No one ever gets to do it. So I've got to ask, so you're doing this process, you're sitting down, you're editing. How is this so much different from a content creator's mental standpoint? Like you created this thing and it's your baby, right? You say you gotta kill your baby every day, right? But you were on television, right? And you know that there's content missing there, there's content missing here, but you said the pace is so much different, right? But is the investment different because of the time you spend in it? Does it feel different? Does your baby feel different than your baby felt when you were on television?
Yeah, because it's such a slower process writing, and you have so much more invested. Because when you're out there speaking on TV or you're doing a story, you obviously care. But like I said before, there's a lot of at-bats, right? I would say that TV and radio is kind of like a baseball season. 5 at-bats a game, 162 games a year, right? You don't have a lot of time to think about it. You make a mistake, you try to move on, you come back. Writing is like, it's like playing 4 golf majors. I mean, that's what it sort of it is. I mean, it's like there's a really intensive process where you have to think over and over and over again. Is this sentence okay? Does this word make sense? And also, this thing is going to live in black and white forever. I mean, the goal is you want to get your book, put it in the Library of Congress so that if a nuclear, Holocaust happens, someone can find it at some point, right? So you want to make sure that it's representative of what you're trying to say, but that it's also good. And then you also have a lot of folks, and this has been very humbling for me again, where from the professional writer's side, who really go in at you quite hard. They don't hold anything back, which is what you want as a first-time writer for a book. And what I found so interesting about that is you have to be able to take that criticism, manifest it, and put it into the next draft in a way where it stings. It stings more than you would think, because it's almost to some degree an assault on your intelligence. It's an assault on something that you spent a lot of time curating. And also in my case, because so much of the book is deeply personal, it's I would be lying if I didn't say there were a lot of times when my response is like, well, you don't know what it was like, right?
Yeah,
You
right.
weren't there.
Yeah.
Which then reminds me of one thing I always hate when athletes do that, right? Which is, well, you can't run a 40 in 4 seconds, so you're not allowed to ask me that question. And I've found myself going into that mode sometimes in the editing process, but then I snap out of it and realize it's all constructive and it's all good. So it's certainly a different process from, I think, social media and television and radio, which I worked in before. I miss radio a lot. I loved radio. It was great. Because that stuff, you move on. You and there's just, you're kind of trying to just try to conquer the beast. When you're writing a book, the beast is really yourself and your own thoughts, and that can be something that is tough to wrestle with.
Luke, well, first of all, my dad called me at around 2:00 today. He was like, make sure that you bring up that in Luke's dad's book, he mentions a gentleman that grew up down the street from him named Huck Geary, that was a baseball player, and apparently spent a couple of years in the major leagues, but was like a Western New York, South Buffalo, like sports legend. We don't know if he's related, but there is mention of a Geary in the Russert book, in your dad's book that he wrote. And he called me today, and if he would, kill me if I didn't bring it up. So we're gonna do a little research on that, and I'll get back to you.
He's the same guy. And
Yeah,
then I think, the great baseball Hall of Famer Warren Spahn, his dad, I believe, lived near South Buffalo.
In South Buffalo, yeah.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh Pirates. And I want to say, listen, South Buffalo, dating back, there was a lot of good athletes that came out of Western New York and South Buffalo, but I mean, not quite as much anymore. But one of the things too that, I mean, at least for me and my dad, you're a couple years older than me, but we're pretty much same, millennium. And my dad and I grew up, I grew up around the Bills. I grew up in Hamburg, a stone's throw away from the stadium, right off Southwestern. I can see the stadium from the high school football field. Yeah. And I just, part of the Bills that, at least for me, has always been really personal is the relationship with the team. My dad and mine relationship is like a conduit to the team, right? And whatever the ups and downs, I was at the game when the Bills were, all they needed was a win. Is this 2004? All they needed was a win
against the Steelers,
against the third stringers, Willie Parker, and all this.
And I remember trying to do our coach a solid because he was an assistant.
Yes. And I remember literally just bawling my eyes out, and my dad kind of saying I want to say that you and I probably had similar experiences growing up with the team because they were bad during the most parts of our cognizant years. But now that you're an adult and you look back on that, does it feel that nostalgia that's still that's the connection that you still have with your dad? Because I know, whenever my old man's, long and gone, the things I'll remember is being at Bills games with him and what football and that whole relationship meant for us was aside to actual parenthood, in that 60 minutes of football, it was a totally different experience than anything else that we had in our lives,
Well, it's bonding primarily, and it's the time that you have with your dad, right? Because that 60-minute game time really translates into 4 hours start to finish, right? And it's something you do together. I have some of my earliest memories are the Bills moments I have with my dad. We actually went back to Buffalo City Hall, and I remember this as a little kid when Norwood was welcome back chanting, "We want Scott," which was surreal. I was at the last 2 Super Bowls, the one at the Rose Bowl and the one in Atlanta. The one at the Rose Bowl didn't hurt so bad because we knew it was over pretty early on. I remember the Don Beebe play. I remember him running there and causing that fumble, which is just tremendous. Atlanta being up 13-9 at halftime, really thought we had it. That was the one that I think stung the most for me as a kid. And then obviously the forward lateral in Tennessee. That was one of the few times I ever really heard my father drop expletives.
So that wasn't the first time I heard my dad say the F word, but it was
the
probably
first time I
single
ever
digits
heard it repeated
Yes.
for at least like 20 minutes nonstop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was pretty wild. But I think what you are tapping into is something that is extraordinarily important, not only just for Buffalo, but all for Western New York. And it ties back to the roots that the team has, not only in the community, but amongst families too. And when there was a real threat of the Bills moving, I think what saddened me the most was how those bonds would be destroyed, that fathers and sons couldn't have those Sunday afternoons together around the Bills with, Labatt Blue and wings and the Bills and talking and whatnot. And that's why I think just having the team stay was so very important, because that is so much of the culture of the city and the region. And to this day, whenever I travel, I always wear Bills gear, and people will say, "Go Bills, where you're from, blah, blah, blah." And it's that connective tissue. And it's certainly the connective tissue that I had with my dad. I mean, I get very emotional when I see old videos of him talking about the Bills. I was fortunate enough to work on that documentary, The Four Falls of Buffalo. And, they pulled a lot of this film. He did some interviews with NFL Films and the late, great Steve Sable about the Bills and those Super Bowl teams, even going back to the AFL teams that won those 2 titles, back in the Jack Kemp days and Cookie Gilchrist, et cetera. And just to sort of see my father, usually on camera, this sort of tough, no nonsense guy interviewing popes and presidents and prime ministers, right, and cracking skulls, if you will, just sort of get teary eyed and talk about his dad, my grandfather, and talk about what it meant to see the success of the team, and how there really is no other sports franchise in the United States that embodies the spirit of a city more than the Bills. And, that's what makes you cry, because you see it in your dad's face. You see it in your grandpa's face. You see it in your friends' faces next to you. And, I was at the Tampa game a few weeks ago with a good friend of mine who's from Buffalo. I went to St. Joe's, and I ended up meeting at Boston College. And the first half was awful. And we said, we're kind of like, well, if it's like this come the fourth quarter, let's just beat the traffic and we'll go back to Ybor City and drown our sours, et cetera. And then they start putting it together. And, it's to the end. We can't handle this. And we're getting, weirdly emotional for 2 dudes in a football game. And the reason is because it's just your dad comes through. He's like, my dad's texting me right now. My uncles are texting me right now. They can't believe it. Blah, blah. And that's what just sticks. And it's a uniquely Buffalo thing. I mean, I know you'll hear from Packers fans and Steelers fans, but they've won. They've won. Yep. You've been there. And the only thing that maybe is comparable is the Vikings. But you know what? They won the World Series. Yeah,
I would say like Red Sox and Cubs fans, they felt it, but now they've gotten to the place that I think all Bills fans
But here's the thing: everyone who was a Cubs fan was a Bulls fan. Everyone who was a Red Sox fan was a Celtics fan, was a Patriots fan. It's like it's not. People from Detroit say the same thing. Oh, the Lions, the Red Wings won 20 Stanley Cups, man. Yeah. Like this, no, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing.
Now, to be fair, I'm not a Sabres fan. So the Sabres winning the Stanley, they call it Stanley Cup in hockey, right? That's what they call it?
Yeah.
That's what they call it, Bruce. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the Sabres winning the Stanley Cup really does nothing for me to quench any of my thirst. In fact, I have the word Sabres and all of Sabres related Twitter muted, so I don't have to see it, because I don't want the overlap, because I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with the overlap. It's too much. I tried to watch a hockey game like a couple of years ago, and I'm like, I don't understand what anything means. So there's blue lines and there's red lines, and I can't keep track of the camera, and I don't know who has the puck, and I don't know that somebody scores until the little siren goes off and everyone raises their hands. I'm like, okay, did someone score? Cool. That was anticlimactic.
It's great. Hey, hockey, if you're not a big fan, it is one, I will say, in terms of to take people who are just casual sports fans, that is the live sporting event they like the most. Mainly because of just how fast paced it is and how physical it is. I don't like the time in between periods, though. That's what gets me live there.
Hockey is for the rampant ADHD that's going through our generation, and it really gives them the connection they need. But man, that 10-minute period buffer, oh man, the inactivity, you could drink a couple of beers in that time.
Yeah.
So that's also I guess a good thing.
So what I want to ask you about, Luke, is the connective tissue you talked about. And specifically, I want to ask you not about connective tissue between the team and the city. I want to ask you about the connective tissue between this regime and the last time the Bills were good, which, quite frankly, the last time the Bills were consistently good before now was the Super Bowl years.
Yeah.
That's it. Like there was no 3 playoffs in 4 years. There was no 4 and 5 years. There was no AFC championships. The last time the Bills were consistently good was the Super Bowl years. It was the 90s. It was this team is a good team. It was Doug Flutie. It was that entire decade. And so I want to ask you, as someone who was so incredibly plugged in at that time, if you see connections. I want to ask you if you see similarities between this team. I want to ask you if you see differences between this team, because a lot of the things of the way we remember those teams are very different because of the aspect of social media. Social media is now a thing. It was not a thing before. The bickering Bills would have been a lot different if Twitter was a thing. I think we can all agree on that. But knowing that there is such this mythological discussion around the 1990s Bills, that decade of Bills football, are we at the spot now where we can just not really ever compare anything to that ever? Because I know we really shouldn't compare statistics because different eras of football. But as far as the way you feel, as far as the way the fan base feels, as far as the way you look at it as an observer, what are the connected tissues between those two things?
Well, let's say something right off the bat. This team right now is way better behaved than those teams were. I don't think social media would have allowed for the Bills of the 90s to survive. So that's a substantial difference. In terms of similarity, though, I think you have a well-established coach, and McDermott and Marv are they're both playoffs for the first 5 seasons. So there's a similarity there. You have Kelly and Allen in the sense that you have a dependable, tough quarterback that the city is rallying behind. To me, it maybe make a Diggs and Andre comparison, but there's no one on the defense like Bruce Smith. And there's nobody on the offense like Thurman Thomas. There's no Steve Tasker. There's no Cornelius Bennett in my mind. I think that team had a little bit more edge to it. I think this team is much more of a sort of all in together, a friendlier bunch, if you will. They seem, it's high character, nicer guys. I think the difference, though, is that those older Bills teams, you got a sense a lot of the times they were going on the field, they were going out to kill people. And they were going to run up the K gun with insane offense. And that defense was really hard nosed. I mean, we always talk about that blowout AFC title game against the Raiders, but remember one against the Broncos? I think it was like 10-3 or something that the Bills won where they were the underdogs in to get to the Super Bowl. Like those teams were very good defensively and could grind it out. So I think you have similarity in coaching and in the quarterback, obviously similarity in how the community is rallying around them, without doubt. But I think that this team is different in just how it's built. It's more high character role playing guys that don't make much of themselves out in terms of ego. I think, you have Trey White is probably famous on the defensive side, a Hyde employer a little bit. But for the most part, these are, to be cliche, lunch pail, blue collar guys. I mean, this defense, I believe, will be one of the first ones that does not have a Pro Bowler on it that's ranked number 1. I read that.
Yeah.
So that's different. That's different. And I just, as a kid, and I go back and I think about those teams. Like Darryl Talley was a bad man. Okay,
yes,
Darryl Talley was coming for you. We don't have a Darryl Talley on our defense right now. That's not to say our defense isn't great. I love our defense. I think our defense plays together. They play their assignments well. I wish they would be more physical sometimes. I wish they would have a little bit more of that edge when they get pushed around, but they've been playing. I think in the new NFL, they're quite good. I mean, they're certainly built to compete against these teams like Kansas City that are running all over the place and whatnot. But it's not the same punch you in the mouth. That's okay, because the game is not that anymore either. I mean, if that defense from the 90s came out there now, there'd be 40 targeting penalties.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Every other hit would be a targeting penalty.
Yeah.
Well, Luke, I want to be cautious of your time here. First of all, thank you so much, man, for joining us. This was kind of a long time coming. I really I'm glad we had a chance to get you on. So give us a little sneak peek. When do you imagine that your book hits the shelves here? Is it going to be sometime this year? And
No, it's coming
however
out
we can promote it.
spring of 23. It's due this year.
Okay.
And then what I've learned through this process is that book marketing is a whole other animal of and of itself. You gotta get out to the book shows. You have to get it on the Amazons. But I'll be coming to Buffalo. Don't worry. Maybe I can sell it outside the Bills gift store someday. But
that'd be a move.
I'll certainly be there without doubt. How are
Maybe
you guys
like a
feeling
Bills
about this
game day?
weekend?
Well, I mean, it's the Jets. It's week 18. I said this before you came on. I imagine we see Mitch Trubisky at least almost this entire second half.
You know what? This is all I will say. The one thing that freaks me out about this team is they seem to play up or down the other team's level of competition.
They gave the Bucs a scare last week.
Yeah, and the thing with the Jets, they beat Tennessee, right? They gave the Bengals a game. They gave the Bucs a game. Saleh is a good defensive coordinator. I've watched a bunch of his games when he was out there with the Niners. This Wilson kid has something to prove. Yeah, we should win. This should be easy. It should not be close because we are much, much more talented. But this is their Super Bowl, to be cliche.
Yeah,
I mean, if they were to beat the Bills in the last week to prevent them from getting the AFC East title, that is something they would build on next season.
Oh, yeah.
And go crazy with. So I just don't sleep on them. Don't sleep on them. I hope it's an easy one. I hope we can put it away by the third quarter. But the last week kind of freaked me out. And good on Dabble for just giving Josh the ball and letting him run it and get in the end zone, because we were getting too cute there for a few of these games. Just win, baby. Just win.
Just win. And I imagine that regardless of the weather or what have you, that kind of comes across this team. They're going to live and die by their quarterback. And and I said this earlier today on Twitter to somebody that I was kind of talking about, the Bills rely on their quarterback too much. And I would tell you, every team with an elite quarterback relies on their quarterback too much. And teams that don't rely on their quarterback too much don't have an elite quarterback. So it's a feast or famine league, and you live and die by your quarterback. And the Bills are just another example of that,
Nate, can I ask you a quick question?
Shoot.
Did you make a passing reference at some Tom Brady HGH allegations possibly on Twitter one time? Were you hinting at that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I have hinted towards it.
This is why I like you, Nate, because you're willing to say out publicly what everybody else is thinking there.
My boss doesn't like for the same reason you like it, by the way.
Complete Buffalo sports fan conspiracy theorist. I have absolutely no proof. I am speaking just off the top of my head. Do not sue me.
Right.
But Antonio Brown and this flame up he had with Brady's guru, right?
Yep.
And the
Alex
fact
Guerrero.
that Brady's playing up to his 50, I like where your head's at there. I like where your head's at there.
Where there is smoke,
it's
there is always a flame, my friend.
It's a little odd because
too many coincidences.
Maybe the guy is genetically gifted, but Manning, Roethlisberger, Breeze, they all got to that point where
they hit a wall. They hit a wall.
Because listen, my dream is to be able to discredit every single pick in the Super Bowl. So between cheating and the possibility that we don't know, this is not alleged yet. It's not alleged.
Right.
It's
not
thought
yet.
about. But if you had confirmed cheating, which we have in Spygate and Deflategate, and then we also have PEDs, I think we can nullify all of them. Personally,
we can pretend 2 decades never happened, and I would be happy with that. I would be happy.
And if freaking Kyle Shanahan and Pete Carroll knew what they were doing, none of that would have happened.
None of this would have mattered.
No,
he's probably not still playing if he loses those Super Bowls.
No,
come on,
no, it'd be gone.
Seriously.
Kyle Shanahan specifically, it really irks me because my boy Matt Ryan from BC, who's a buddy of mine, he deserves a Super Bowl ring. And Kyle Shanahan did the same damn thing against the Chiefs with Jimmy G. It's just crazy stuff. Anywho, thanks for having me on.
We could literally we could have our own podcast, Luke. So we appreciate you coming on, boss. Go Bills. More importantly, next time you're back in the 716, we'll make sure we get you hooked up with some.
Go to the 9/11 Tavern, go to the Blackthorn, go to Dailies. We'll do it all. Do the tour.
Absolutely, my friend. We appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
Happy New Year to you, my friend.
You too.
Luke Russert there on the Genesee Brewing Company guest hotline, and man, that was a very cool episode, Bruce, I've got to say.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. I kind of felt like a third wheel there at the end. I was like, listen, do you guys just want me to hop off and you guys can just have your own podcasts? Because I'll do it. I'll go ahead and hop off, and it can be food for thought with Luke Russert and Nate Geary. I'm not jealous. I would never be jealous. Why would I be jealous? No. You know what? It's just payback, because I haven't brought this up yet because you were, of course, not available. Ladies and gentlemen, Nate has now lost 2 in a row to me. He lost the lobster bet, and then he lost the fantasy football championship this past week. And his cat cannot believe it. His cat is literally sitting there going,
speechless.
Nate, is my owner a loser? Is that what it is? Is my owner a loser? No, come on. That would never be. No. It was, but you know what? No, it was a wonderful time. It was a wonderful thing. Nate is engaged and ready to take his team to the next level. I think he's on the hunt for a quarterback and a running back this offseason, and he's gonna make it happen. It's gonna be a thing. So, while we are waiting to wrap up here,
to what
we are gonna go,
what, Bruce?
Well, we're gonna wrap up eventually, but we want to make sure we get to comments, questions. If you have questions for us now, go ahead and drop them. Super chats get priority in the YouTube section, and I do want to bring up Andy's question: who would be the first 1990s Buffalo Bill to be ejected in 2022? RJ says Daryl Talley. I am inclined to agree. I think there's a very reasonable chance. You ready for this one? Steve Tasker.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got to tell you something. So, Steve, when I'm in the broadcast booth for the games, which Monday I'll be getting my booster shot on Monday, and I will be live pre-game and halftime from the stadium and the wild card round. So I'm very excited about that, being at my first ever Buffalo Bills playoff game. Be very excited about that. Steve usually sits next to me during this, and I've known. Not as an adult. I played youth football against his son, Luke, dating back to a long time ago. I'm 30 years old. So 20 years ago, right? 20 and 15 years ago, I played his son a lot. And he played for East Aurora. I played for Carnegie Scranton here in Western New York. And, I became friends with Luke, and we were up against each other up until we were in high school. And then he went to St. Francis, and I went to Frontier. Steve is a different, and he was behind the bike last year. He was the team's color guy when Eric, couldn't do it because of COVID restrictions, and he was working with the ACC network. Steve is one of the most animated people that I have ever seen in my entire life, Bruce, at these games. Like, I'm, into it, but I'm trying to recognize I'm next to the owner's booth. I'm media. I can't come off, like I'm not in the press box where there is no clapping, there's no standing, there's no emotion whatsoever. That's right below the M&T Bank sign up in the, or maybe that's the other side. I don't know. But this is the broadcast booth, right where Murph is, where everybody is. So it's not like that. You do get some cheering. We're next to the owner's box. We've got the national broadcast to the left of us. But watching him during a Bills game is like appointment television. So if you're ever, in a good position to peep over, maybe you're over in the heated seats, just look down during the game and watch Steve. That's really all I can say. But he is one of the greatest dudes that I've ever met, Steve Tasker. It's a damn shame that he is going to be jobbed here of at least the traditional era of Hall of Fame. Hopefully, he can kind of come back in the next couple of years when he becomes a legacy candidate and so on and so forth. But for me, Steve Tasker really might be the guy. But Kelso might be the guy.
Oh, that's a good one.
Kelso was the hammer from the safety position, like the hammer. Like he is probably the first guy getting ejected. Would be my guess.
That's a really, really, really good point.
Thank you.
Really good point. Okay, RJ says, is it just me or does Josh play poorly against bad pass defenses and plays well against good pass defenses? Atlanta, Jacksonville, and Indy were all awful pass Ds with poor DB play, and Josh looked awful. Okay,
so I have a theory.
Go ahead, Nate.
And I was thinking about this by myself. I was driving in my car. Sometimes you have random thoughts in your head, and this just popped up in my head, thinking about this exactly. First of all, weather had a big, I think, to play in that Atlanta game. But Jacksonville and Indy a little bit of weather, but still, I digress. Josh tends to play hero ball when he gets down, and that can either go for him or against him. But I think this is a game plan thing, Bruce. When you go into a matchup knowing that the other defense can't do something, that's the thing you're going to try to exploit. But sometimes sometimes in the NFL, these guys get paid. We know that they get paid too on the other side of the ball. Some days you game plan for a weakness that week they figure out. And it's very possible that you didn't really come up with a plan B, Bruce, because plan A, you sort of just took for granted it was going to work because it's Jacksonville, because it's Indianapolis, and you believe if you stop the run and you can get ahead, you can get Carson Wentz to beat you. You don't think you can do that. Or, the New England game. So I guess for me, what this comes down to is I think sometimes the Bills get into this one-track mind offensively, thinking, I think it happened in the Steelers game, and I think it happened in the Jaguars game, which was, we believe we can run 4 and 5 wide sets against you, Pittsburgh, and try to stop us. TJ Watt, he did nothing against us last year in our matchup in 2020. What's any different this year? We have the same matchup. Darrell Williams took care of business in 2020. He'll take care of business in 2021 against the Defensive Player of the Year. Not worried. We'll run 4 and 5 wide, and we don't need a plan B because we know they can't stop us. And I think that mindset got him in trouble against Pittsburgh, and it certainly got them in trouble against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think that's my theory behind this, which is they sort of not necessarily underestimate a team, but they put together a game plan specific, and when it doesn't work, they're like, why would we veer away from what we know is supposed to work? This is a terrible pass defense. We've got to stick with it. All of a sudden, it's the fourth quarter, and you're down by a touchdown, and it's 4th and 11, and you stuck with it too long. Do you know what I mean, Bruce? So that has been my sort of running theory here.
Sure. I get it completely. I completely understand it. It also tracks with the idea that the Buffalo Bills have really significant amounts of victories by double digits over the last 2 years.
Every single one of their wins this year is by double digits.
If they come out and they have a game plan and they execute, they stomp you. And so this idea that they have so much faith in their game plans is not exactly poorly founded, because those game plans have led to lots and lots of double-digit victories. So
right.
David says, Bruce, do you think we intentionally do not sack quarterbacks? We only want pressure and containment. If so, do you agree with it? When do we flip the switch and go for sacks?
No.
I don't think we're intentionally not trying to sack a quarterback. I think the qualitatively, the method by which we would like to obtain pressure is by not giving up overly significant gaps, which is the reason why you end up with these long-armed, heavy-handed edge defenders, very similar to the way that you had them in Carolina. I do not think that there's an opportunity for significant dynamism and speed rush off the edge. It's just not historically the way that they do it. They also prefer to get it straight up the middle because the shortest distance between any 2 points is a straight line, which is the reason why you invest a draft pick in a player like Ed Oliver. So I don't think they're intentionally trying to get pressure and not get sacks. I think they'd always prefer to get sacks, but they recognize that if they generate pressure from the defensive line, they're still going to end up with a negative play more often than not, even if it's not a sack. So we are going to move along. We are a little bit behind. Thanks a lot, Brownout and Tom Brady. But we are going to ask about winners and losers because we got to finish off with winners and losers. Now, Nate, you want to start with winners or you want to start with losers?
Let's start with losers.
Oh, you have something, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready.
I wore this for a reason. Do you see the color?
I do see the color.
Yeah. What's that color remind you of?
Well, the resolution's not great. It looks like it's like an orange of Syracuse-y color.
So who in the NFL's got this same sort of
the Browns
vibe to it? That's right, the Browns. Because not only is Baker Mayfield a big loser, not as just Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry. I will stop short of calling Cleveland Browns fans losers because I very much like Cleveland Brown fans. I like the Cleveland Browns. The whole organization's a big loser this year. The injury sucks. The injuries suck for Baker because if you were to told me in the beginning of this season in a year to really judge your quarterback, Bruce, what's the one thing you don't want to happen? An injury that could stop you from fully vetting and evaluating the quarterback. And that's exactly what happened. And now there's rumor that he's going to ask for a trade this offseason. I think that's probably the right move for him. I think it's probably the right move for the franchise. It's a tough situation. And listen, I think there's a lot of opportunities for Baker to go elsewhere and be in a better situation. I think a scheme fit from the start, this Stefanski system from a schematic and from a what they're asking the quarterback to do is not a fit for Baker Mayfield. He is not an under center 5 and 7 step drop and throw the ball inside the hash marks to tight ends. That's not Baker Mayfield's game. So where he goes, I don't know. But what I'll say, Bruce, is that organization's a big, giant loser because there may not be a more disappointing team in the last decade. I kid you not, the last decade with higher preseason, not only aspirations, but expectations for them to lay the egg they did this year as just super disappointing because talk about a window. I think a lot of people viewed Josh Allen and the Bills situation in 2021 as what actually happened in Cleveland in 2021, that there was this regression and that Josh Allen got paid, but he didn't really deserve it. And that didn't happen with Baker, but don't do what the Bills did with Josh Allen because that's a really tough situation that's playing out. It could set their franchise back a very long time. But here's the last thing. And I'm going to end this loser on a prediction, Bruce. Kirk Cousins will be the very first free agent signing of the league year, and he will be a Cleveland Brown on March 3rd or whatever day it is. Now, midnight.
Kirk Cousins is under contract for 2022 for Minnesota. So they're going to cut him?
He's not going to be around next year.
Now, this is really, really important. So I'm going to stall for a second because I thought the same thing. And then I went ahead and looked up Kirk Cousins' contract. And I went ahead and looked it up and I was like, well, because I was talking to a friend who's a Browns fan. And in 2022, if you decided that you wanted to cut him, so a pre-June 1st cut, $45 million in dead cap, $0 in cap savings. If you trade him, you get $10 million in dead cap and $35 million in savings. I think he's going to get traded.
That's fair. Regardless, first day of the league year, whether he gets cut and then signed and or traded, that makes the perfect sense to me. I think Minnesota is going to be rebuilding. I think Mike Zimmer's gone. I think the whole nine. And they're an older friend. By the way, Jeremy White has been saying this for a few weeks on pregame. Luke Russert just said it a little while ago. This team doesn't have a Bruce Smith.
No, they don't.
I see this Bills team needing a Stephon Diggs-like trade for the defense at the edge position.
And
what better place than Danielle Hunter in Minnesota?
Yeah, if they're gonna tear down.
And he has expressed wanting to leave. I think by the time the acquiring team is actually going to get probably a good deal for his level of play if he can be healthy. But man, that has been something that's been on my mind. What is the Stephon Diggs trade for the defense, or what's another Stephon Diggs for the Bills trade? Because I think that they're going to need that this offseason. That's just something to throw in your ear. But let's finish up these winners and losers, Bruce.
Okay, so JR comes in with the super chat. First off, JR, thank you for being a part of this.
Thanks, JR. Appreciate you, buddy.
We love JR. He's a super fan of the show. He says, loser, Tampa Bay and Tom Brady. So I'm going to piggyback off of JR.
That's fair.
My loser is Antonio Brown, who has perpetually been a loser, obviously, for many times. If this show was in existence for 3 or 4 years, my guess is that Antonio Brown would have ended up being a loser for many opportunities. There is no outcome for what happened to Antonio Brown that ends positively for him.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a thing. There is no potential outcome. If I was Dr. Strange, I have sat there, I have held the time stone in my hand, and I have seen all of the future possibilities of the way that this can play out. And how many of them does it benefit Antonio Brown? Not even one. Not even the one opportunity that the Avengers had to beat Thanos, that doesn't even apply to Antonio Brown. Out of all of them 14,805,000 or whatever the number was that Doctor Strange sees as far as outcomes, of all of them, 0 of them end well for Antonio Brown. There was no scenario where he was going to win. There's no scenario where he's going to win a grievance against the Buccaneers, get his money. He didn't get what he wanted, and he lost his marbles. And now there's no way he's going to fall up again. He had an opportunity to rebuild his career with Tom Brady. So falling up is not an option. So he got all the bag from, at the time, Oakland Raiders. And he successfully got out of that contract and ended up with a lesser deal with the New England Patriots. Well, then the sexual assault allegations come out and he got a lesser opportunity. And he finally got a chance to rebuild with the most successful quarterback in NFL history. And he botched that one too. So Antonio Brown, I have not had the opportunity to say this about you thus far. You are the biggest loser. Goodbye.
Not in a good way. You're not the biggest loser like you've lost the most weight either.
At least I don't think so.
I don't
know what his diet plan is like.
Me either.
But he's the biggest loser this week. Biggest winner in the NFL. Nate, what you got?
It's got to be Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I mean, what a tremendous pick in the face of what many folks were, I think, really criticizing the Bengals for taking Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell. And that has turned out to be, I think, listen, Penei Sewell is going to end up being a great tackle in the league. I think, Detroit ended up getting a great player for the future. It is very clear the stable of weapons that they have created in Cincinnati with the quarterback. That is a legitimate playoff and Super Bowl threat. The AFC at the top, Lamar, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. Like, it's going to be fun. And it's too bad because Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, if it was those two or another guy, like it was Big Ben, Peyton, and, Brady for a long time, if there was only three, those guys I think would win a lot of Super Bowls. I think because of guys like Herbert, because of guys like Jackson and Burrow, there's a good chance really good quarterbacks are only going to win one or two Super Bowls in the AFC. So, I think the biggest winner's got to be the Bengals, Joe Burrow, and what that team in Cincinnati's doing. They're a real threat this year.
I'm going to go with Rashad Penny, not just because he helped me win. Not just because he helped me win that. Rashad Penny has always been talented. Now, he shouldn't have been a first-round pick because you shouldn't take running backs in the first round. But Rashad Penny has always been talented. That was never a question for him. But in a moment where he had an opportunity, they declined his fifth-year option. Rashad Penny is going to be a free agent this offseason. And if ever there was a time, if ever there was a moment for Rashad Penny to show up for himself and his future career and his earnings in the NFL moving forward, it was now. Rashad Penny, somebody's going to give him money this offseason. I don't think it'll be the Seahawks, but somebody is going to give him money because they have Chris Carson, who's on a 2-year deal. So they have him coming back next year, and he'll be he took Rashad Penny's spot multiple times already. So that's their guy if he's there. But if Rashad Penny doesn't go off in the last 4 weeks, if he doesn't have that happen, he's a street free agent that signs for the veteran minimum and gets cut in training camp. Now he signs a 2-year, $12 million contract for somebody to come in and be a completely reasonable bridge running back. In fact, I have a feeling there may be a team who might be interested in him that we are talking about right now. Yeah. I would not be shocked at all if Rashad Penny ended up getting 2 years, $8 million, 2 years, $10 million, 2 years, $12 million. From, if you're looking for a running back who's still young, right, has very little mileage on the tires and has always been an incredibly dynamic athlete who runs downhill. Mind you, this is a guy who averages between 6 and 8 yards a carry between the tackles. Yeah. He averaged after contact 7 yards per attempt, 1 yard per attempt, 6 yards per attempt, 5 yards per attempt. After contact last 4 games. This is a guy who averages after contact 4.18 yards per attempt this year. That's absurd. Mm-hmm. So
my man made himself some money. He's definitely a winner. That's a good one, Bruce.
Biggest winner, Rashad Penny. He made himself. He went from no one's going to care about me to someone's going to think there's something there and going to give me money. And that what is there a bigger definition?
The definition of a
That's the definition of a winner. Yep, so Rashad Penny, hat off to you, my friend. I am thrilled for you. you stuck around. It was really hard to consistently get banged up. You see it with Harrison Phillips. How happy are we for Harrison Phillips that he's starting to break out now after all the injuries he had? That's the way the Seahawks fans and everybody else feels about Rashad Penny. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of this show this evening. I know we had some technical difficulties at the very beginning, but I thought Luke was fantastic.
Oh,
Nate, don't even. Nate is pantomiming the idea that he might put that eggnog up to his lips and would immediately die. I'd have to get in my car. By the time I got there, you'd be dead, Nate. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
You'd be long dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'd be aspirating all over the place. It's just an absolute nightmare. But that's not the kind of food we serve here at Food for Thought. We feed the food delicious. We serve delicious food here at Food for Thought. And ladies and gentlemen, we hope you had a good time. We hope you were well served. And we hope you didn't leave hungry.